Welcome to the Minnesota Association for College Admission Counseling Virtual College Fair. We're so excited that you're joining us today for this event. We have some fantastic schools that you're going to hear from today. My name is Jessica and I'll be your facilitator. Before we get started, I have a few housekeeping items for you. Number one, your camera and microphones are off, so the panelists cannot see or hear you. You can ask questions by using the Q&A button at any time during the presentation. This is one of the many sessions that's happening today, so make sure you go back to the schedule and sign up for some more on the website. This session is being recorded and will be available at strivescan.com/Minnesota. Now I'm going to turn it over to Jen to get us started.
Great, thank you, Jessica. I appreciate that. All right, welcome everyone. We're happy that you are joining us today to learn a little bit more about affording a private college education. So we are going to start with some introductions and then we'll actually go into a number of different topics. We'll start with a bit about affordability in general. We'll talk about both merit-based financial aid and need-based financial aid. We'll talk about some other financing options like student loans and work study. And then we'll wrap it up with some comments about the value of a private college education. So I have a number of colleagues who are joining me today, and you've got great resources on this webinar today. So I'm really excited about the content and the information. I do want to echo what our facilitator said, is that along the way, if you do have questions, please put those in the Q&A section, and we'll be sure to get to those before we wrap up. And if not, we can also reach out in the future. But I think you'll find that we're covering a lot of content today, and we'll answer a lot of your questions. All right, so here's our panelists, just to give you a quick snapshot of who will be joining us. We have a number of private institutions, both here in the state of Minnesota, as well as one from Wisconsin and one from Iowa. So you've got a great diversity of schools represented today. And we'll also share this screen again at the end so that you can get our contact information when we're done with our presentation. But to get us started, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Abigail. We're going to start with just a brief introduction of each of our institutions, and then we'll get into the content about financial aid. Thank you. Abigail?
Thanks, Jen. Hi, everyone. I'm Abigail. I am an admissions counselor at Northland College in Ashland, Wisconsin. You can see the Wisconsin there. We're kind of at the northernmost part of Wisconsin, and we're a small private liberal arts college. So we're right next to Lake Superior, the largest freshwater lake in the world by surface area. And we have about 600 students. So small class sizes, and our location near the lake, and we're also near the Apostle Islands. And we are surrounded by about 1 million acres of national forests. So Northland's really great if you want to get into outdoor recreation of any kind. And also if you want to study things like natural resources, geology, outdoor education, or biology. But we definitely have a wide range of majors to check out. That's Northland, so thank you. And up next is Luther College.
Awesome, thank you, Abigail. Hi, everyone. My name is Petter Smith. I am an admissions rep at Luther College. Luther is located in Decorah, Iowa. That's about 2.5 hours southeast of the Twin Cities. It's about an hour southeast of Rochester. So hopefully that gives you a little frame of reference of where we're located. Similar to Northland, we are also a liberal arts school, meaning we want students to take courses in all the different disciplines, right? Just because you're a biologist doesn't mean you're only going to take biology courses, and so on. We've got about 1,800 undergraduate students, and it's only undergraduate students at Luther. We have 60 plus majors, minors, and pre-professional programs. Some of our largest programs are biology, psychology, nursing, education, music, and business. We have a great relationship with the Mayo Clinic, which is a great perk for many of our pre-health science students. Our average class size is 19, and we've got an 11-to-1 student to faculty ratio. And with that, I think I'm passing it back to Jen.
Thank you, Petter. Yes, so Hamlin University, my name is Jen Olson-Kringle, and I serve as the Director of Undergraduate Admission at Hamlin. Hamlin's located in St. Paul, Minnesota, in an urban neighborhood about halfway between downtown St. Paul and downtown Minneapolis. And you'll see there that we enrolled just under 2,000 undergraduate students. We also do have graduate programs available. What I'll be focusing on today is our undergraduate programs. So we enroll each fall somewhere between 450 and 475 new first-year students. Our overall student body includes about 42% first-generation students, and about 39% of our students identify as domestic students of color. Like my other colleagues on this call, we have small class sizes and a great student to faculty ratio where you're looking at small class sizes and the opportunity to really get to make those connections. Our students are diverse in their interests. We have over 80 student organizations and over 50 different areas of study. Just a note about some of our popular programs. Our most popular majors include business, criminology and criminal justice, education, legal studies, and psychology. And one of the other pieces that's really important to us is really for students to have an experiential learning component to their education. So everyone will be required to do something like that, like an internship or research or potentially a study abroad during their time at Hamlin. Thank you very much. I'm passing it along, I believe, to Neil.
Hi everyone, my name is Neil Livingguth. I am Assistant Director of Financial Aid at the University of St. Thomas. A little about St. Thomas, we are a private Catholic liberal arts university in St. Paul, Minnesota. We're also like Hamlin, we're about halfway between Minneapolis and downtown St. Paul. We have about 6,000 undergraduate students, so we're kind of mid-size, about 10,000 total students, including graduate students and other programs. Our average class size, though, is still about 21 students per class, and we have 150 different majors and other programs to choose from. Some of our top programs would include business, health sciences, and engineering. So with that, I will pass it off to Lyric, who will talk about Concordia University.
Hello, everybody. My name is Lyric Poppin. I'm an undergraduate admissions counselor here at Concordia University, St. Paul. So again, one of our other schools that are in St. Paul. We have about 5,500 total students. About 44% of those students are students of color, or identified students of color, so that's really nice. Relatively smaller campus. We have the average class size of about 17 students. You can have those really strong personal connections with your professors, your classmates, and really have those deep conversations. We have over 60 majors to choose from, which is really nice, and 20 pre-professional tracks. So like pre-engineering, pre-physical therapy, pre-physician assistants. We have a wide variety of programs on our campus. We are the only private institution in the Twin Cities competing at the D2 level. So I'd like to point that out. And we are the most affordable private institution in the state of Minnesota. And I think with that, we will go on to our presentation and move forward. So some quick statistics out here. So we have about 95% of first-year students in Minnesota are receiving grants and scholarships. So overall, really high number. 31% of Minnesota students with family incomes below $50,000. So we want to talk about the affordability of going to college with this presentation. And then 64% average of those students share tuition covered by grants for our first-year students. So when we talk about affordability, you're talking about looking at institutions, looking at colleges and universities and trying to make that decision on where you're going to go to. And sometimes those decisions could be based on, can you afford to go to the school or not? So when you guys are looking at the pricing of a school, the sticker price in a sense, you'll see like a overarching cost, and not everybody's going to pay that exact sticker price. So I want to keep that in mind. There's plenty of different ways to pay for it, schools, whether it's financial aid, scholarships, and many different areas like merit scholarships, so based on your academics. We'll talk about some need-based financial aid as well, and other financing options, possibly grants and loans. A lot of times when you go to an institution's website, you'll see their net price calculator somewhere on their website. Essentially, a net price calculator is for you to kind of enter in some information, and then it'll kind of let you know where some other students have received from institutions and from federal funding in terms of scholarships and grants for financial aid to help them afford school. So with that, I will pass on to our next presenter.
Thank you, Lyric. All right. So we want to make sure that we talk about the variety of opportunity as it relates to financial aid. So the first category we'd like to talk about is merit-based financial aid. So sometimes you'll hear colleges and universities or counselors talk about merit scholarships. Sometimes they'll use the language gift aid. What's important about merit-based financial aid or merit-based scholarships is that you don't need to pay those back. So typically scholarships, typically grants, those kinds of things will be monies that are gifted to you based on either previous academic work you've done, characteristics that you might have, or there might be other reasons to, or need-based as well. So you'll find that the grants and scholarships are a piece that you do not need to pay back. We're going to be very clear with you about what kinds of resources we're providing you. So know that each institution will give you that kind of specific information. You can receive merit-based scholarships from colleges and universities, so the schools that you're applying to, from community organizations, perhaps from your employer or a parent's employer. And there are a lot of different organizations out there that offer scholarships. So the first group, it will probably be the schools that you're applying to. So when you apply to colleges, definitely ask or inquire about what the merit-based scholarship process looks like. Many colleges will award these scholarships based upon the information you provide in your application. So it may not be that there's another application required. Again, we're going to be very clear with you as staff members that work at the institutions about what is required to be considered for these merit-based scholarships. So in some cases, you'll apply for admission, and then when you find out about admission, you also will probably find out about what kinds of merit-based scholarships you receive from that institution. Or there may be other scholarships, perhaps in fine arts, or in particular academic departments that do require an additional application. So you'll want to inquire about those as you're looking at the different schools that you're considering. It's always important to keep looking for scholarships as you're going through the process. We encourage you to utilize free resources to search for outside scholarships. There are a number of websites that are out there that are scholarship search engines. Sometimes I hear students say, I probably shouldn't apply, or I shouldn't take the time because I probably won't get it anyway. If you think about just spending a little bit of time each week or every couple of weeks looking for outside scholarships, you might be surprised at what's available. And also, even if you were to receive, let's say, a smaller scholarship in the amount of $250 or $500, but you only spent, say, a half hour or an hour applying for it, when you think about that, that's actually worth your time. So certainly something to consider as you're moving forward in this process. One of the things I do caution students, though, and families, do not pay to use a search engine like this. We all have information on our individual websites about outside scholarships. And so we don't want you to pay for a resource when there are free resources. So just keep that in mind as you're moving forward in this process. Be aware of deadlines. Many scholarships do have specific deadlines because of their selection process. So just something to keep in mind as you're searching for merit-based scholarships. The next category that we're going to talk about is need-based financial aid. I'm just going to introduce the process by which you will move forward on the need-based side. We will all encourage you to complete what's called the free application for federal student aid. You've likely heard about this from either guidance counselors or other colleges, or maybe you've received an email from one of us encouraging you, if you're a senior, that it's now time to fill out the FAFSA. The FAFSA becomes available on October 1st of your senior year. So if there are any juniors in the audience, you don't need to worry about this until next fall. But you're always going to be looking ahead at filling this out for the year ahead of the year that you're enrolling. The FAFSA now uses what we call prior information. So for those of you who are entering college in the fall of 2022, you're actually using tax year 2020 information. What this means is that you don't have to have 21's information set yet in order to apply for the FAFSA. We're looking at the year before, so tax year 2020. You can select up to 10 schools to receive your results. This usually covers the list of colleges that most students are considering. And you do not pay for the FAFSA. So again, much like I encourage you not to pay to use a scholarship search engine, you do not need to pay for filling out the FAFSA. This is a free resource. There are also some colleges and universities out there that use something called the CSS profile. This is something that I encourage you to ask of the colleges you're looking at. It is not required for all colleges, so you don't need to fill that out for all schools, but inquire with individual institutions. I know there are some in Minnesota that do request the profile, so this is just a piece of information, extra information for you to be inquiring about as you prepare to apply for financial aid. With that, I'm going to turn this over to Neil, who will take it away. Thank you, Neil.
Great, thanks, Jen. So need-based financial aid can come in a few different forms. What will happen is after you send your FAFSA to the up to 10 schools that you're interested in, each college university that receives that will send you a financial aid award or financial aid offer, as it's often called, specific to your FAFSA results. So we as institutions will use your FAFSA results to determine the types of need-based financial aid that you're eligible for. So a few of these different types would be grants and scholarships, loans, and work study. So grants and scholarships, a lot of times these terms are used interchangeably. More often than not, when you see something called a scholarship, it probably has some sort of merit component to it, but it can also have a need-based component to it where whoever is offering the scholarship might want to be aware of your FAFSA results or your financial need in general. Grants, more often than not, are going to be primarily based off of the FAFSA or your financial need as determined by the FAFSA. But they are both types of funds that you receive that are given to you. They're considered gift aid, so you don't have to pay it back and you don't have to work a job for it. So these are really where you want to start your journey with need-based financial aid. Grants in particular can come from a few different sources. They can come from the institution themselves. I believe all of our institutions here offer some sort of grant for students, and most private colleges will offer some sort of grant program based off of financial need as determined by the FAFSA. But it can also come from the federal government. The largest grant program in the country is the federal Pell Grants program, which is determined by FAFSA results. Minnesota offers the Minnesota State Grants for students that complete the FAFSA and have financial need that attend a Minnesota College or University. Other states will offer need-based grants sometimes as well, generally to state residents, but they can potentially offer state grants as well. So grants can come from a number of different sources, just like scholarships, as we talked about earlier. One thing I wanted to, we'll talk a little bit more about loans and work study in a second here. One thing that we wanted to make sure that families were aware of, especially in the times that we're in now, is that, as Jen mentioned earlier, the FAFSA for seniors is going to be based off of 2020 tax information for the family. But if your financial situation as a family has changed since then, there is the ability to update that information with a process that's called professional judgment. So the Department of Education gives financial aid offices at every institution the ability to perform what's called professional judgment. You might hear it called special circumstance too, where we can actually go into the student's FAFSA and update it to better reflect the family's current financial situation. So that could be things like job change or job loss. That can be changes in the household or large out-of-pocket medical expenses. So if these things have happened to your family, or your family's currently facing them, definitely reach out to the schools that you are interested in, because we want to be able to help you in these situations. It won't always result in additional grants and scholarships or other types of financial aid, but oftentimes it can help make those college expenses more manageable. And at the very least, again, it gives us a better reflection of what your current family's financial need is, as opposed to what might have been 2 years ago. So again, don't hesitate to reach out to schools. Sometimes we can be limited in what we can do, but overall, we just want to be able to help you in this situation. So next I'll talk about loans. So of course you want to look at scholarships and grants first, but loans can be a really good resource for helping pay for college expenses now that you will later repay with future earnings that you're going to be receiving, based in part with from the degree that you're earning. So loans are kind of an investment in your future. All students are eligible for federal direct student loans. Parents in the audience might remember these being called Stafford loans, now called federal direct student loans. So by completing the FAFSA, all students are eligible. So whether you make $1 billion a year or $1 a year, all students have eligibility for federal direct student loans. It's based off of the student's grade level in college. So freshman dependent students are eligible for $5,500 for the year. There's no cosigner required, so no one else has responsibility on this loan other than the student. No payments are due while the student's in school. And then, as I mentioned, FAFSA is the only application. So once a student is admitted to a school and has accepted FAFSA on file, they are eligible for these loans. There's a little bit more paperwork to do, but students are going to be eligible for it. A couple of terms that you'll probably hear as you go through the process: subsidized versus unsubsidized. So these are the two types of federal direct student loans. The only difference between the two is that the subsidized has no interest while the student's in school, and then the unsubsidized loan does accrue interest. So the subsidized loan starts accruing 6 months after the student graduates, and that's also when repayments on these loans start. But that's the only difference. They have the same interest rate. Otherwise, again, no payments in school, no cosigner required. So these are great options that are relatively low interest rate, again, in the student's name only. Could be a good way to start building credit for students as well. So these are really good options. And this is what generally all schools will suggest that students look for first when they're looking at student loan options to help cover some of those college expenses. But there are federal parent and private loans available. These will have a credit check involved, and then private loans will require a cosigner. Federal parent loans will have the loan in the parent's name. So these are options that are available for students, but you want to look at these federal direct student loans that are determined by the FAFSA first. So with that, I believe I'll hand it over to Abigail, who will talk a little bit about work study.
Awesome, thank you. So work study, you've probably heard the term, and it's basically a type of job you can have during the school year. It's most commonly going to be an on-campus job, but sometimes there are opportunities to work off campus with an organization or a business, but majority on campus. I'll list some examples here of jobs that you can find at Northland, but if the other college reps want to put in the chat work study jobs you can find at your school, it'd be cool to have kind of a variety of some examples. So work study jobs might be working in the library or the fitness center, the cafeteria, the compost crew or the garden crew, working with maintenance, or usually in an office, like the admissions office, alumni office, business office. They all need a lot of help from students to kind of make the school go round. So a work study award is also given by filing the FAFSA and sending it to the schools you've applied to. So some schools are awarding work study based on financial need. So sometimes not every student will get a work study award at every school, but mostly, especially private small schools, especially like at Northland, we only have 600 students. So we have plenty of jobs to go around. So we do give a work award to every student. And you don't always have to file the FAFSA as well. So if you can't file the FAFSA, if you don't qualify, like if you're not a citizen or if you're undocumented or DACA, Sometimes the school will set aside money for those students to still be able to work on campus without a FAFSA. So it usually works the same way as work study, but it's through the school's funding instead of the government. So if you can't file the FAFSA to get a work study, talk to your schools. There's usually some options as well. And with work study, you do get just a normal paycheck like a normal job every 2 weeks, and you can choose on where you want that money to go. So some students have it applied directly into their school account, their school bill, tuition, and other students keep the paycheck for their daily living expenses, buying groceries or gas money. Or, students do have the option to split it and do half towards their bill and keep half for themselves. It's up to the student, but I think it's mostly recommended to kind of have the student keep the paycheck for themselves for spending money and living expenses. Maybe they'll buy some textbooks, things they'll need throughout the year. You generally don't really know how much you're going to earn in the year, how much a job is going to pay by the hour, or even if you want to work your first year. Some students don't work during school, or maybe take a few weeks or a few months to kind of get a feel for campus before they start applying for jobs. So it can be a bit unpredictable, the exact amount, so it's kind of hard to rely on it to pay the bills. So it might just be best to keep the money as the student for using to go out to eat or buying your everyday groceries for those living expenses. Jobs on campus are also a great way to make connections on campus and build up your resume, especially during your first few years, because your resume is probably short and you might not have as many connections that you're going to have on campus. So, when I was a student, one of my jobs was in the admissions office giving tours. So when I graduated and was looking for a job, I was a really great candidate to work in the admissions office with my experience as a student. So some really great network opportunities. And then I thought it was also worth mentioning there are things like work study jobs and non-work study jobs that you can have at most schools. And the big difference is where the money is coming from. So work study, you get this award from the government through the FAFSA, and the amount ranges from about $1,000 a year up to $4,000 a year, but most students are kind of in that middle section, $1,600, $2,000 a year. And a non-work study is usually from the budget of the department of the job you get at the school, so the money's directly from the school. So that's kind of the difference. A work study award does have that maximum amount you can earn. So if you get a $1,600 work study award, once you earn $1,600, you're probably pretty much done working for the year. Whereas, a non-work study job, you don't really have a limit to the amount you can earn. So there's kind of those differences, and it's up to the student, what you kind of want, what jobs are available that are work study or non-work study. But most students are working about 10 to 15 hours a week, and the jobs are super flexible around your schedules and how much you want to work and earn. And then I do have this example here, some kind of quick math you can maybe use to try and figure out maybe roundabout how much you might want to earn with a work study during the school year. If you're wanting to set up like a budget or kind of a plan for the year, which I highly recommend. So my example is most semesters are 15 weeks. And you're probably realistically spend maybe 13 weeks actually working. It might take a few weeks to find a job and get set up. You might work less or not at all during finals or midterms. So you might work about 13 weeks. And then I have, about 6 hours a week, but you can do 10, 15, up to 20, no more than 20 hours a week, but usually, 5 to 10. And the amount you make depends, so the federal minimum wage starts at $7.25, but I've seen work study jobs go up to $10, $11 an hour. But at $8 an hour, working 6 hours a week, I have about $600 for this semester, which is about $1,200 for the year. So as you're talking to schools and kind of maybe have a better idea of what you're looking for, you can use this to kind of calculate and see and make a budget, for living expenses, buying your textbooks, things like that. So that is work study. I see, there's some questions in the chat, so we will check that out. Oh yeah, the examples from the other reps with their work study jobs, that's awesome. So that is it for work study. Feel free to ask any questions, and then we'll pass on to the next slide here.
Awesome, thank you, Abigail. So as we talk about how to afford a private college education, we also want to talk about why you would pay for a private college education, right? There's a lot of value in a private college education. I want to start out by mentioning the 4-year graduation rates that I'm sure each of us on this call are at institutions where our students are graduating in 4 years, probably 90+% of the time, right? The reason for that is the really individualized attention that each student gets from their academic advisor, from their professors, from even possibly the career center on campus, which we'll get to in a second. We don't want you to pay for more semesters or more years than you have to, right? And that's why we make it a focus to get each student graduated in 4 years. You also heard all of us mention our small class sizes when we were introducing our institutions at the beginning of this presentation. So why is that so important? Why do we want to mention that? When you have a small class size, you really get to know your classmates and your professors. You form a connection with them that happens through the really critical dialogue that you have in class with them. It happens in the study groups outside of class. It really forces you to engage on the topic that you're studying. We all know what it's like when we're in a huge class where we can kind of blend into the background, right? We sometimes don't care quite as much about the class when that happens. And so that's why small class sizes are such a great perk of a private college education. It really helps you form those bonds, and it really gives you that incentive to work as hard as you can in the classroom. Faculty engagement is really important at each of our schools. The faculty are teaching at our schools because they want to teach. They want to interact with students. They want to have that relationship with students where they can work with them on a day-to-day basis. Some of you might have heard of something called office hours. At each of our schools, professors hold office hours maybe once, maybe twice a week, where any student can come to their office and ask them specific questions and have a one-on-one conversation about a topic that maybe they're struggling with, or maybe that's a little bit more difficult for them. And so having that accessibility to your professors, again, can really help you when you're struggling in a class or when you just need a little bit extra attention. Jen mentioned experiential learning earlier. I think we all agree that that's really important at each of our institutions. We want to give students opportunities to have hands-on experience in their field, in the area that they're planning to go into after they graduate. So that can happen through internships. It can happen through research. It can happen through labs. It can happen through those work study positions that Abigail was just talking about. There are a lot of different ways that can happen to give you some actual practical experience in whatever field you're planning to go into. That can happen partly because of career development services that we offer at each of our institutions. We all have a career center or something like that, where students can go if they have questions about maybe they're not quite sure what they want to go into. Maybe they're not quite sure what they want to study or what that will mean for their future after their education, after their undergraduate degree, right? Students can also go in there and get some help looking for internships, get some experience. They can go in there to be connected with alumni. And that leads us to our next point. Alumni networks are really a huge asset for each of our institutions. We have alumni who want to help students find internships. They want to help students find jobs. They're really proud of their alma mater, and they want to help those students at their alma mater get in the right field and talk to the right people, right? We all know that networking is important. And so having that alumni network is really valuable. And finally, leadership opportunities. Like Abigail was saying, those could come in your work study positions. They could come as a member of an athletic team. They could come in a music ensemble. There could be volunteer leadership opportunities. You could be on the executive board of a club or an organization. And the great thing about each of our institutions is that you can find these leadership opportunities in more than one area, right? Just because you are a captain on the volleyball team does not mean that you can't also be on the executive board of the math club, right? And not only do those things give you really great practical experience in leadership, they also look really good on a resume, right? When you're going on to the next step too. And with that, I think I will pass it back to Jen.
Thank you, Petter. Thank you, colleagues. That was very, very helpful. All right, everyone, we are at the point of, we've finished our content. So we hope it's been helpful for you to learn a little bit about the different types of financial aid that are available from our private colleges, and also just a little bit of more detail about the different ways that which you would pursue and apply for those. We did have one question that I want to make sure we get answered before we wrap up. I'll invite my colleagues to join me on screen here if just in case there are different variations to the answer. So the question was, do the net price calculators have anything to do with merit-based aid, or are they just basing their estimate on the family finances? So early on in the presentation, we noted that we all have net price calculators available on our websites. And Lyric talked a little bit about those at the beginning of the presentation. So I can tell you, I think many colleges do both. So when they put their calculator together, they do include merit-based scholarships. So at Hamlin, for example, when you're filling that out, you'll answer some questions about your academic profile, and then you'll also put in information about your family's financial situation. So I think many probably do that. Is that true, colleagues, at your schools too? Yep. Okay. I'm getting nods there. So good. And Neil, I don't know, with your experience, you have a little more experience in financial aid proper. So does that sound about right?
Yeah, I would say so. As far as just the requirement, all colleges and universities in the country need to have a net price calculator, but there's a very minimal requirement of what needs to be in there. However, with private institutions like the ones we have here, or just in general, we like to, show off what kinds of scholarships that we're offering students. So we do include that in our net price calculators generally, because we want you to know that this is an affordable choice for you.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you, Neil. Yep. That's exactly why we put this into our calculators, so that you feel like, or so that you do have as much information as you can have in front of you. Of course, I always tell families it's an estimate, so you still need to go through the process with each of us. The information, things change each year, and sometimes there's more information that you're providing in your application. So you definitely want to move forward in that process, but that at least gives you a sense of an estimate. So another question came in. What is the perk of private colleges versus public? I think that's really what Petter was sharing when we were talking about the value of a private college education. We really feel like there are a lot of great opportunities at our individual institutions. In particular, I think we're talking about small class sizes, the opportunity to really engage with faculty and get to know them through mentoring, through opportunities to do student and faculty research. So there are lots of awesome opportunities at our institutions, and we could certainly all share those examples, but that along with the experience I think that you'll have when you visit our institutions and learn more about us as individual places, I think that's really why we want and feel why we want you to look at us, and why we feel like we have a lot to offer. So I don't know if anyone else wants to add to that. Feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I can jump in. So I actually attended a 4-year public university for college and I graduated, it'll be 3 years in December, but now I work at a private institution. I'm originally from Minnesota, never considered Concordia initially. When I was looking at schools, never really considered private institutions, never thought I'd be able to afford them and everything like that. And so the school I attended, never toured the campus. I do not recommend doing what I did. Definitely ask questions, tour the universities that you're interested in. But yeah, it was a medium-sized campus. My average class size was probably 100 to 150 students. And so I came from a really smaller high school in the Twin Cities. And so that was a big jump and big difference of lifestyles in a sense. Like I went from being a big fish in a small pond to a little fish in a big lake in a sense. And so I like the private institution aspect just because you get more of a connection with your professors, relationship building. Because at the end of the day, you know you're paying to attend college for the education, but you want to get a little more out of it as well. Having those strong relationships that go beyond college. So if you're struggling, why are you struggling? Those professors really care about you and want to get to know you personally outside the classroom and support you in any way that they can, whether it's helping you find a job, attending any of your sporting events or joining your clubs, different things like that. Those are some of the things that I see very valuable within going to a smaller private institution.
Thank you, Lyric. Absolutely. That was great. That was great story and testimonial to share. So we really appreciate that. Well, I think we are at time. Anything else? I want to open it up to my colleagues. If there's anything else we want to say, we are, but we're so thankful that you joined us today. And any one of us would be happy to answer individual questions for you, even if they come up again in 4 or 5 months, or even next year, if you're a junior and not quite ready for this process. We are here to help. And that's really why we do the work that we do. So thank you. Jessica, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time. I hope that everyone was taking notes because they shared some great information in this session. So if you didn't, you can go back and see this later. I'll tell you how in a minute. After you close this Zoom link, you're going to get five question survey. Make sure you fill it out. Give us your feedback. We want to hear from you. There is a college fair starting at the top of the hour after this. So if you want to learn more about more amazing schools, make sure you log back into the website and sign up for some more sessions. This session and all the rest of the sessions are being recorded. So make sure that you find it at strivescan.com/Minnesota. If there's nothing else, everyone have a good day and I'll see you at the top of the hour. Bye.